The station hung in orbit like a crystal spider, its arms extending into the void, glowing faintly under the light of a distant sun. Inside, the air hummed with energy, not from engines or machines, but from control, the precise, silent authority of the Empire. Every surface reflected perfection: polished floors, blinking interfaces, and the cold discipline of a civilization that measured worth in genes and loyalty. Kaya Voss pressed the case to the platform's interface. The material was sleek, almost living in its subtle response to touch. The moment her fingers made contact, the chamber breathed, as if it recognized her not as an intruder, but as a key. Overhead, the rings of light surged, circling faster and brighter. Kaya felt her own genetic code being read, not as a verdict, not as a sentence, but as a message. Somewhere deep in the station, the Queen's crown, a network of circuits and light that crowned her head like a halo, flared in acknowledgement. This was no ordinary mission. She had been sent to recover what had been lost, to retrieve a truth hidden behind layers of code and centuries of secrecy. And now, standing at the threshold of the Empire's oldest archive, she realized something astonishing. Her arrival had not been anticipated. Together with the Queen, silent, composed, yet undeniably aware of the stakes, they pressed forward. The sealed doors responded, opening as though willing to reveal the world within. Inside, projections exploded into the room, casting holographic columns of data that danced like living organisms. Hidden clauses, engineered to gatekeep, flickered in the air. Lists of citizens, names once thought permanent, blinked red and green. Access had been silently denied, not by crime or fault, but because their sequences hadn't sung the right way. Kaya's breath caught. So, all of this control, is just a filter. The Queen nodded, her eyes steady on the projections. It was never about protection. It was about compliance. The Empire measures certainty, but certainty is fragile. It's easier to contain than to trust. A record, missing for generations, surfaced in a stream of golden light. Kaya reached for it, fingers brushing the nanite-infused interface. She could feel it, a contingency plan so old, it had become legend. Royal lines had been preserved beyond memory, hidden among outsiders as a form of insurance, a living backup, a flesh-and-blood safeguard in case the palace ever needed to reboot itself. Kaya stepped back, exhaling. So, I'm disaster recovery. The Queen's reply was softer than expected. More than that. You are proof. The walls, infused with intelligence, reacted to her words. Streams of data flowed past protocols, past locks designed to verify and suppress, and the station hesitated. Integrity, error, legitimacy. The words echoed as if the system itself were considering what she meant. Legitimacy, Kaya said aloud. It's not in a gene. It's in a choice. The nanite curtain trembled. The locks, designed to enforce order, paused in recognition. Somewhere deep in the Empire's framework, truth had arrived, the kind sanctioned by a crown but unlocked by someone who had never belonged. Quietly, without alarms or sirens, the station's public displays ignited. Citizens paused mid-step, captivated as their own histories, denials, and hidden truths played out in luminous lines before them. Kaya watched them, mesmerized. The Empire's most trusted weapon, verification, was now a mirror. People stopped, not in panic, but in wonder. For the first time, they understood the life they had been allowed, the lies they had been told, and the freedom now extended to them. The Queen exhaled, a sound not of relief but of clarity. Order is a story, she said. We are writing a new one. The doors ahead unsealed, not because the system relented, but because it had been rewritten. Beyond them, the corridor felt different. Air moved like it had a voice of its own, less obedient, less constricted. Distant murmurs rose, not of alarm, but of realization. Life had been paused, now it was waking. Kaya turned to the Queen. And me? What happens to me? Do I get a throne? A cell? A loyalty card? The Queen studied her. For the first time, her composure shifted. Warmth, almost human, softened the edges of her calculated calm. You are no longer a tool, she said. You are the proof that choice outweighs control. That truth matters more than rule. For now, you will be the story. Kaya's eyes drifted to the projections. Names, faces, lives once lost in protocol now gleamed in vibrant color. Among them, she saw herself, not as a pawn, but as a pivot, a living proof of a different path. Her first step into the corridor was cautious, reverent. Each footfall echoed, a reminder that she was no longer just a witness. She was part of the change. The walls whispered, the lights pulsed, and the station seemed alive in a way that had nothing to do with machines. As they walked, the Queen explained. The Empire feared uncertainty. It built walls and codes to contain it. But life is chaos. And within chaos is potential. You, Kaya, are the embodiment of that potential. Not a ruler, not a soldier, but a proof that what we fear most, freedom, is the truest power. Kaya absorbed the weight of it, feeling the pulse of the station underfoot, the hum in the air around her. Every corridor, every chamber, now felt like a question waiting to be answered. And she knew the answer would not come from protocol, from crown, or from command, it would come from choice. At the far end of the corridor, a chamber glowed with an unearthly light. Within, the heart of the Empire's intelligence waited. The central core, a lattice of consciousness designed to manage, monitor, and maintain every life in the orbiting stations and colonies. Kaya approached. The core seemed to sense her presence, pausing in its eternal calculation. The Queen gestured. This is the spine. And you are the key to rewriting its story. Kaya reached forward. The hum of energy intensified. She could feel the web of lives, the lattice of histories, the archive of truths flowing through her fingertips. The interface accepted her touch as if it had been waiting for centuries. A voice, neither human nor synthetic, but somewhere between, spoke. Identity, legitimacy, choice, verified. Kaya's heart raced. This was more than she had imagined. She could see, in the data streaming past, the lives that had been denied, the truths that had been hidden, the orders that had never been questioned. And now, the lattice had no choice but to acknowledge her. With a final pulse of light, the central core shimmered, then stilled. The Empire's spine had accepted a new command, choice over certainty. Kaya turned to the Queen, seeing the faintest hint of a smile. So, she asked, voice steady despite the weight of the moment, what now? Now, the Queen said, we let the world decide. And for the first time in centuries, it will be allowed to choose its own story. Kaya exhaled, a slow, steady breath, the kind that marks the end of one story and the beginning of another. The corridors beyond teemed with life awakening, lights dancing across faces and projections alike. Freedom, raw and unfiltered, pulsed through the station. And somewhere, deep within the lattice, a message burned bright. Integrity, error, legitimacy, all reconciled, all rewritten, all alive. Kaya smiled. She was no longer disaster recovery. She was proof. Proof that life could defy control. Proof that choice mattered. Proof that the Empire, perfect, unyielding, eternal, could finally learn to bend. The Queen's hand brushed against hers. Together, she said, we will ensure they remember what it means to be human, to be alive, to be free. Kaya nodded. In that instant, she felt it, the vast, uncharted potential of the future, a world reborn not through power, not through conquest, but through proof. The station no longer felt like a cage with perfect lighting. It felt like possibility, humming softly, waiting for the story to continue. Kaya and the Queen stepped into the corridor, leaving the central core behind, though its hum lingered in her mind. The air felt lighter now, less constrained, as though the station itself had exhaled after centuries of holding secrets. Yet, for all the calm, there was no mistake. The Empire would not accept this change quietly. Its guardians, its enforcers, would resist every step. The first sign came as a ripple of light along the corridor walls. Security drones, sleek, polished, hovering silently, emerged from hidden alcoves. But something was different. They paused. Kaya realized with a shiver that the lattice had already reached them. The drones were frozen in hesitation, unsure whether to obey old orders or the new command she had imprinted. Don't touch anything, the Queen warned. Even hesitation can trigger the old failsafes. The Empire does not forgive mistakes. Kaya nodded, gripping the hilt of her energy blade, a weapon issued only in emergencies. She had trained for years for missions like this, but never one where the enemy could see through her bones, through her code, before she moved. Now, though, she had the advantage. She was both the key and the proof that the Empire could be rewritten. They reached the observation deck, the view stretching across the station into space. From here, the city-like structure of the orbital colonies was visible. Lights sparkled in grids, docking bays pulsed with incoming shuttles, and in the distance, mining stations rotated slowly, extracting precious resources from a nearby asteroid belt. All of it was controlled, measured, catalogued, and now, potentially, free. People don't know yet, Kaya said softly. They'll follow old rules until they see a sign. Then we give them one, the Queen replied. She moved to a terminal and tapped her fingers. Immediately, every colony, every station under the Empire's jurisdiction, began broadcasting. Not commands, not propaganda, but simple truths. Records of those denied access, lives hidden, stories erased. History unfolded in light and sound. Kaya's breath caught. She saw a miner pause in 0G, staring at a floating projection of her great-grandmother's name, denied for decades. A trader in another sector froze as a message revealed the truth of her lineage. Across the Empire, people stopped. Some cried, some smiled in disbelief. They were seeing the reality of the world that had been denied to them. Even now, they'll resist, the Queen said. Control is comfortable. Freedom is terrifying. Kaya understood. She had felt that terror herself when she had first discovered the archive. Choice was heavy. It demanded courage. And yet, it was the only path forward. As they watched, the station shuddered slightly. Alarms didn't blare, but subtle vibrations ran through the walls. The Empire was reacting, not with firepower, but with awareness. Somewhere deep within the station, a protocol was stirring. One Kaya had not yet seen. Old defenses, the Queen murmured. They know what we are doing. They will try to rewrite it. The lights flickered. The holographic projections shimmered. Then, without warning, the doors to the archive slammed shut, locking with a resonating tone that echoed through the deck. Kaya's pulse quickened. What now? The Queen's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. Now, we move to the heart of the Empire's oversight. If the proof can reach the people, the Empire will bend. But the core of command, the arbiter of rules, must witness it too. They ran down the corridors, the hum of energy beneath the station growing louder. Security drones reactivated, but hesitated again as Kaya's presence pulsed through the lattice. It was as if the station itself protected her. Doors that would normally be sealed by strict protocols opened in response to her approach. Finally, they reached the observation hub, a massive chamber at the center of the station, where the Empire's overseers monitored every citizen, every transaction, every rule. Screens and holotables stretched in all directions, filled with lines of code, faces, and histories. At the center, a figure waited, the Chancellor of the Empire, a man whose reputation alone had enforced obedience for decades. Kaya's mind raced. She had heard stories of the Chancellor, ruthless, brilliant, unyielding. Yet even he paused when he saw her step into the chamber. His eyes widened as the projections shifted to include her genetic sequence, now pulsing with undeniable authority. You, the Chancellor began, voice tight. You are supposed to be. Proof, the Queen said. The proof that the Empire's certainty is not absolute. That truth, not fear, must guide action. The Chancellor's face twisted. You cannot, the lattice will not. It already has, Kaya said, stepping forward. She extended her hand, and the core of the station, its neural lattice, reacted instantly. Lines of data streamed toward the Chancellor, not as accusation, but as revelation. Names, stories, histories denied by protocol, all unfolded around him in light. The Chancellor stumbled back, overwhelmed. This is impossible. Kaya shook her head. Nothing is impossible when choice exists. You designed this empire to obey rules. But rules are not life. People are life. Outside the hub, alarms finally sounded, not because the station was under attack, but because the people were responding. Citizens across colonies had begun to question, to hesitate, to step beyond the routines they had followed for generations. Ships paused mid-flight. Workers halted mid-task. Markets stopped as traders glanced at their own projections, realizing the truth of their existence. The Chancellor turned to the Queen, desperation creeping in. "You can't. This will collapse everything. The Empire cannot survive." The Queen's voice was calm. "It will survive. But it will survive differently. Stronger, because it will respect those it governs. You see, choice is the ultimate verification." Kaya felt a surge of energy. The station pulsed around them, reacting to the combination of the Queen's authority and her own proof. Doors opened, communications flared, and projections expanded to fill every monitor, every terminal, every holodisplay in the hub. The message was clear: legitimacy is not in birthright alone, it is in the decision to act with integrity. For a moment, silence. Then the Chancellor slumped into a chair, overwhelmed. He had spent decades enforcing control, yet now he faced undeniable truth. He had no words. Kaya approached him. "You have a choice. You can help write the new story, or resist and be left behind. History doesn't forgive refusal." The Chancellor looked at her, then at the Queen, then at the projections, and finally nodded slowly. "I understand." Outside, the citizens' hesitations turned into action. Orders were questioned, routines adjusted, and lives once hidden began to unfold openly. The Empire, once rigid as steel, began to bend in the direction of freedom. The Queen turned to Kaya. "It is not finished. There will be resistance, challenges, mistakes. But the first step is taken. The spine of the Empire knows you now. And because it knows you, it will bend." Kaya allowed herself a small smile. She had not come seeking glory or power. She had come to reveal truth. And in doing so, she had changed the course of a civilization. As the observation hub pulsed with new activity, a signal came from the colonies. Citizens were reaching out, sharing stories, questioning old orders, and offering assistance to one another. The proof was no longer theoretical, it was alive, spreading across space. Kaya turned to the Queen. "What happens to me now?" "You continue," the Queen said. "You are the proof, but also the guide. The Empire will need you, not to command, but to remind it what choice looks like. You are the bridge between order and life, between protocol and freedom." Kaya nodded, understanding the weight of her role. She was no longer just a key. She was the spark that had ignited change, the living embodiment of what it meant to be human within the Empire's vast machinery. And somewhere deep in the lattice, she could feel it, a pulse of approval, recognition, and trust. The Empire's spine had learned to bend, and through her, it had learned that even the most rigid system could change when proof walked among its corridors. The Queen smiled faintly. "Tomorrow, we teach them more than rules. We teach them life. And you, Kaya, will lead by example." Kaya inhaled, feeling the hum of the station beneath her feet. The corridors ahead were bright, not with control, but with possibility. She stepped forward, into the unknown, ready to guide the Empire toward its next chapter.